And it looks like we're live on Friday, Scott.
Hey, that's excellent, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. I'm pleased to see that you look somewhat alive.
I, I feel much more alive than I did at 3 o'clock this morning.
Oh,
I must
man. And you got the shot in the morning yesterday?
say,
Evening?
right at noon.
Okay.
And so it took about 15 hours,
Yeah.
13 hours before the side effects kicked in. Oh, man. Waking up at 3 o'clock in the cold sweats and yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But I'm
Hey,
glad you are now.
it's the process.
Yeah, you're 2 in. So what's the deal? In 6 months, you're safe?
2 weeks, actually. Yeah.
All right.
95%.
Well, outstanding. I'm glad you're with the living, and happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you, Dave.
We've come together once again, you and I and our 4 other participants so far, to celebrate the Raspberry Pi and all of its manifestations as a tool to help us continue, those of us who are locked down as a result of the pandemic, to continue studies along the lines of CompTIA certifications and just about anything else you want to know that's computer and technologically oriented. I am Dave Rush,
And
your
I am Scott
semi-worthy
Jernigan.
host.
Oh, sorry,
I'm sorry, say it again.
I jumped on you.
Yeah, I was gonna do the whole I'm here and this is what I do, and we should
Okay.
rehearse this stuff, huh?
Right?
Or at least plan it. Well, I am Dave Rush. I'm the senior instructor at Total Seminars. When I'm not doing stand-up training, and there hasn't been a lot of that in the last year or so, I get to do this with Scott every week. We call this Dramas. Dave Rush Ask Me Anything and Scott. And I do all the other things that can be done from home when you're an instructor. Excuse me, finishing up a dry cough from a couple of weeks ago. It's almost done, but it will be interrupted. So I've had an all hands on deck project this week. I'll tell you about it. And in the meantime, with me, my friend and boss.
Hey, I'm Scott Jernigan. I'm editor-in-chief for Total Seminars and a frequent co-author and editor of the man, the myth, the legend, Mike Meyers, and also do stand-up instruction. And I get to hang out on Friday afternoons with my buddy Dave Rush.
Outstanding.
And answer your questions, which is awesome.
All right. And this is an Ask Me Anything, Ask Dave Anything, Ask Scott Anything. So by all means, if you got anything you want to talk about, ask about, as related to today's topics, as related to Raspberry Pi, as related to anything CompTIA, or just about anything shy of religion and politics, we are up for the challenge. If we don't have an answer, we'll find one for you. If you've got a question that's too long to answer on the 200 character limit YouTube, or if you're not watching this live right now and you can't punch in a question, there are ways that you can get in touch with us. Let me share one with you, won't I?
Please, Dave, share those ways.
There it is. Click and click. Hey, so you can find me via email at my company address. I work for Total Seminars. My name is Dave Rush. Put them all together, you get daver@totalsem.com. Or you can always contact me by my personal email, drushtx@yahoo. Scott, how can they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with
drinking.
me. They can get in touch with me via email, scottj@totalsim.com. Again, shocking, right? Dave R. Scott J. And you can get in touch with Mike Meyers by going to Michael M. @totalsim.com. So there you go. You can also, we are avid gamers and have our Steam accounts. Mine is Scarheart, Dave's is Blood Rush TX, and Mike's is Senor Pepe.
Yeah,
so there you go. And of course, he didn't know how to make an enye, so it's Nor.
I did know how to make an enye. I just didn't care enough to put it up there.
No, his Steam account has no enye, so it's just an N. So there you go.
He's Senor
Pepe.
All right, that's a good enough intro. That's what I want to do. I've been trying to cut these intros down a little bit so we can get right to questions and
Sure.
get the topics of the day. So let's see who is with us today.
So at 2:04, Patricia Grace asked an important question.
Okay.
Dave, do you have moves like Jagger?
I certainly look the same age. I'm having a real conundrum about what to do with this thing. Let it grow, clean it up.
You've definitely gone.
Jagger do a PSA the other day, in the last 2 days, along the lines of pandemic and pro-vaxxer and anti-vaxxer, whatever. And they must have gotten one of those people who work on corpses to make them look so lifelike, because he looked really lifelike.
Nice. That's what I need. I need an embalmer.
Don't we all?
Shave 20 years off my face, please.
All right, I'm gonna go back to the beginning here. Tollywood checked in first, followed very quickly by Jason Helms. Hey, Jason, and Alan Duggan, who has been in a race for first for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So what you got to do is coordinate with Tollywood. Excuse me. Sorry. Andrew Pallish is here. Nice to meet me. That never stops being funny to me. I like that one.
Never stops being funny.
Jason Helm thinks Raspberry Pis are awesome. I agree with you. And thank you for not putting the E in there. Though those Raspberry Pis are good too. Hope everyone is good, says Jason. I am so good, except for the dry cough. And Patricia Grace, as we well know, has checked in. No, that's not Patricia Grace. Somebody's hijacked Patricia's account, because Patricia always says, "Hey, nerds."
And 202, man. Happy Friday, nerds.
Okay, well, we're there. I was getting ready to read RedTube's.
Right?
Goodness, RedTube has changed his name up all over the place. Okay, we'll go with that. Thanks again for the Widevine tip. Man, that sent me down a rabbit hole that I'm going to talk about a little bit later this afternoon, RedTube. My pleasure. I'm glad it's working. Went back through Pi Day Friday archives and found the live you did on DRM and Chromium. So don't use that method that we used to make Chromium work with DRM back when we talked about the media servers, because there is a radical new improvement that's appeared in the last month or so. Kevin Lopez turned me on to it from a post in Discord. I went and did some digging to see if it was true, and sure enough, and I tried it a couple of different ways, and it's good stuff. So I posted it on the Docker episode, I think 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks at the worst case.
Okay.
But it's really easy. Just do an update and upgrade, and sudo apt install lib widevine 0. I don't know. I think I have a slide for it today, just to remind everybody, because it came up in Discord with RedTube this week. And so as I was playing with it again, I thought I'd reshare some info. Andrew, I'm a programmer, and I got tendinitis. Yeah, some of your questions on Wednesday Mike's AMA, very programmer oriented. If we didn't know better, and I'm hoping we know better, one might think you want to learn how to program viri, and maybe in fact you do, just for the sheer learning value of it in a know thine enemy kind of approach.
Right.
One is, I got a wooden desk, I'm knocking.
Or just put on that black hat and,
Mess up, man. Hey, I super scrolled already. There we go.
Nice.
203. Jason Helms, I need to check out how well Chromium worked with YouTube live feed. Okay, and again, I did some experimenting with that last night, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And I will share what I came up with. I am disappointed with the results because I like Chromium, but I found something that seems to work better. Do I have moves like Jagger? I have not always, but in recent years, having seen concerts of his, not live, but televised concerts, thoroughly come to believe that while he's probably capable of moving and still dancing, he doesn't. On stage, he is a monolith with a microphone. He doesn't move. He might walk a little bit, but he doesn't do the moves like he did in the 70s or 80s or maybe even the 90s.
Come on, that's because he's in his 80s.
He is in his 80s. I don't fault the guy. He hosted SNL a year or two ago, and I watched the opening monologue. It's about all I can get through these days. And he came to that. Apparently, I wasn't the only one with that conclusion. And he says, "Yeah, I'm going to do this just like I do a concert. I'm just going to stay here and talk to you. I don't sing anymore. I just talk, and I don't move anymore. I just stand."
You don't make it through Weekend Update. That's like my favorite part of SNL.
No, as soon as the monologue's over, I come back here and start working.
Ah.
Sadly, that's pretty true. Hi, Andrew Hutz. Oh, Dave, the drawers for the resistor project are coming out really nicely. Yes, I saw the picture on Discord. You know, we keep mentioning Discord here because it's all over the place. So I want to throw up the Discord link. And Scott, as we speak, is putting up, hey, something really interesting about my Discord link. It didn't change from the time I posted it last week.
Huh.
So it may start to remember me that I'm inviting people. And so this one has lasted more than a week. I did this one just today. Oh, I'm so sorry about this cough, guys. Okay, so there is an unofficial Total Seminars Discord channel. It has nothing to do operationally with Total Seminars. We don't operate it. We don't run it. We're not even moderators on it. We're users on it, just like everybody else. It was created by our good friend, Jose Braden. And everybody who hangs out at Mike's AMAs and at these AMAs and wants to talk about Total Seminars and the AMAs, and the topic has broadened out so much. There's lots of subforums. There's Raspberry Pi subforums, and there's Kali Linux subforums, and there's tech support subforums, and so many knowledgeable people on there that make this a second source to learn, to socialize, and come on over and join us. Every post AMA, a couple of minutes afterward, if there's no other commitments by whoever's conducting the AMA, we get on with cameras and mics and invite you to do the same. And we'll get face to face and we'll talk about questions and point you in directions, hopefully give answers if we can. Excuse me. I really hoped I'd had that cleared out by today. So come on over, discord.gg, whatever the letters are. And if this is expired, or if the one that Scott has posted has expired by the time you see this on the archive, just use your favorite search engine, look under Discord Unofficial Total Seminars, and you will find us. I went and did that just as a test the other day to make sure that I'm not making that up. I always kind of took it on faith.
Yeah, don't listen to Mike, who says it's the unofficial Mike Meyers channel. That's the unofficial channel. So there you go.
Good news. I never listened to Mike. I don't think I ever noticed that. I probably noticed that back in the early days when I had it called that.
I noticed it because I have to correct him.
Of course. Yes, you have to correct him.
I'm his editor. It's what I do. It is my idiom.
And I know how much he appreciates it. Hey, Discussionism, happy Friday to you too. Happy Pi Day Friday. I am contemplating, at 2:07 says Discussionism Official, I'm contemplating attending or heading down to the bank and to return the skateboard.
Which
there you go.
I'm sure has some meaning somewhere, but I don't get it.
Yeah, Tullowit has yet to chime in with a pun.
I have faith.
Okay. Yeah, the artist formerly known as RedTube. Hope I am as well as always. I am as well as can be expected. I feel fine. I am fine. I just cough a little bit right now, cleaning out some old lungage damage. How are you feeling after that second shot? You have to answer it all again, Scott. Andre missed it at the beginning.
You missed the very beginning, yeah. So got my shot about a little after lunchtime yesterday. Second shot, Moderna, and was feeling all like, life is great, man. No side effects. I'm good until 3 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up with the chills and the sweats and the very typical flu-like symptoms. Tylenol has been my friend. So we're drugged up heavily here. But hopefully the worst of it is done. We'll see.
Tylenol, is that another word for Chateau Saint Michel?
Yes. Some of that too.
Oh.
So.
Oh goodness. Andre is running the Tullowit job today.
All right, so I now have the second. All right, so for those of you who have not done this before, I'm running the chat right here on my laptop. So I'm looking at the chat in time, which you can tell. We'll actually, when we answer questions, we'll look at our timestamp. You can look at the 3 vertical ellipses, the 3 dots in the top right, and turn on the timestamp so that when I say at 2:10 p.m., Tullowit says Jagger no longer has the moves like Jagger. Like you'll be like, oh, okay, now I know where he's at. So that way you can follow along when we're answering questions. And in case we skip a question, you'll know. And just feel free to post again. No worries. I'm also scanning because Dave will be doing most of the talking. I'm scanning the other monitor and looking at the live chat in real time. So sometimes there will be a slight disconnect between what Dave is saying and when I'm laughing. So you'll know why. It's all good.
And I just realized I had top chat on instead of live chat. So hopefully I didn't miss anything. But if I missed something, if I slid past in the first 15 minutes or so, just post it again and we'll catch up. I'm not going to go back and read them all just to see if I missed something simple. 211, Jason Helms. Hey, Dave. The other week, I was being helpful with Raspberry Pi using Chromium and the whole DRM. I didn't install Widevine, but everything worked great, audio, video, etc. Just did the basic updates. Okay, whatever works. It was just a shot in the dark that whatever you were trying to watch Udemy and not having luck with Firefox, but it used to work with Chromium and didn't work with Chromium anymore. So my first shot was, hey, Widevine's available now. And I didn't know if UDM is DRM or not. I presume that it is because of a lot of things that they do and some of the things they don't. So, but working is working, and I'm happy for you, however you accomplish it. I like hearing about the red tube. Oh God. I don't know if I wanted to read that out loud.
I'm not sure you did. So 208, Andrew Hutz clarified that he was asking about the how to write a virus just for the learning value. Think like a criminal to catch the criminal. So right. White hat, not black hat.
Of course he was.
Yeah.
It's the same reason that most people take their first drink. I'm not looking to become an alcoholic. I just want to see what everybody else is doing. Learn about it. See?
Right.
And next thing you know, you're mainlining. Did I say that? Yes, Raspberry Pi can run Crisis. It's a half a frame per minute, and there's a lot of tearing. I will tell you the story of Crisis and Steam games today. We'll get into that shortly.
We will. Absolutely.
Have you found it harder to breathe since your vaccine? Asks Tullowit at 2:15. Scott,
have I what?
Have you found it harder to breathe?
No.
Okay.
No. And
I see your breathing looks fine.
Just straight up like real flu-like symptoms, chills, sweats, body ache, headache, that kind of thing. Reminded me of a very important thing. I haven't had the flu in 20 years. I had forgotten how awful it is. To get your flu shots. Get your flu shots. Don't skip those because the flu is not a joke.
Oh yeah, especially when you're Scott's age. He doesn't have the color, but he's still got time on. No, I get the other way around. He still has color. 216, Andrew Hutz. Would it be possible for someone to break into someone else's system, force a BIOS update, then force a shutdown during the update to potentially brick the motherboard? Hypothetically, it would be hard. That first step, the break-in part, unless they're physically in there, you got to be in a BIOS session to do a firmware update on most of the BIOSes that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I can't.
So So that's not going to be open from a network connection. There is a network connection possible if you're using network firmware update. So, let's go with the realm of possible, but put it on the real low percentage scale. You need an internal attacker, and they're going to need a truncheon. So, they're going to stop you right in the middle of the process, whack you over the head, and then finish the computer destruction. But from a practical standpoint, I don't think so. Hypothetically.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be really hard to do.
Yeah, and then he added on the next one remotely. No, but that's such a, again, anything's possible, but that one's so far below the radar.
Yep. Too much crap here.
Scott Jernigan is not falling apart, Tolwood. I agree. Though I have seen his haircut look better. It's been a year since it looked better.
It's so heavily.
You or one of your family members doesn't do home haircuts by now.
I'm going with the 1970s movie hair.
Nice.
Yeah, why I'm such a hairy guy.
Ooh, long beautiful hair,
shining, gleaming,
even flaxen, waxing. Oh man, that's a good song. Good team, Discussion Oficial. Yes, you're so right, Dave. Asking yourself what they are on is a major key to what 40 mainline Raspberry Pis I'm tapping into. Oh man, you should see how I get them in the spoon too and start heating them up.
Wow.
Oh, I opened up a bad road.
Yeah, you did.
Gonna put the gates right back down.
Let's not go there.
Total Seminars channel. I have to go look at the other tab to see when you post to that. I'm using the Dave Rush account on here. I have the Total Seminars channel logged in just so I can press the big red button to start it and stop it, but I don't watch that page. I don't watch that tab. So if you're trying to get my attention, anybody who wants to do an at whatever the heck I am, Dave Rush, or I'm somebody in here. You know what? I haven't, David Rush. I haven't posted anything. I'm just going to put the word test in here.
They can't at you.
Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'm going to post my Discord link.
Okay. Sounds good.
That way I can make it practical. Checklist. No, there we go. Discord invite. Void. Paste. Click. There we go. Okay. Now you can at David Rush me. All right, we're almost caught up here to that point, and then we can do other stuff from the list here. Maroon 5. Of course, I read it. My sneaky Maroon 5 got under the radar. Good. I like my motherboard. Yeah, it's safe.
Yeah.
Unless you got kids or an angry spouse. You see how open-minded I was there with the word spouse.
That was very good.
Old me would have used a totally unwoke word. They're gonna figure it out. Makes me wonder about these guys today. Ooh. At Islands.
Tellowit, we are running slowly today.
Yeah,
just saying.
There's total truth to that. As usual, I did a late night last night. I did this all hands on project for work all day yesterday, and I hadn't done almost any prep except for last weekend for the show today. So I was all right, well, last night's the night. Got to watch The Last Man Standing and then head in here and get working. I worked till around 3, and then I got up at 7 because I had to help get the wife off for a road trip for her. And I'm as fogged as Scott is without the vaccine.
All good.
I convinced 2 separate people who like coding to get Raspberry Pis just this week. Man, I wish great. Thank you. Raspberry Pi Foundation and Raspberry Pi Trading thanks you. And I think you should get a commission.
Absolutely. So we're caught up.
Yes, we are. So let me go head over into Uncle Outline, see what kind of good things are going on in here. I did that. Oh, hey, by the way, the Pi R Square is open. I did not archive the stuff I'm doing today yet. I'll do that tonight, or maybe even Saturday again, just because I was so late working, I couldn't devote the extra 15 or 20 minutes to building an archive, but I'll do that, in short order. Oops, wrong utility here. This one, click this. But if you're new to the game, if you're watching on the archive, you haven't seen this live, we have on this very site, pirsquare.zapto or zapto.org, 2 pages of a website that I'm maintaining that holds the archives of all of the resources that I use when I do these AMAs. So it's got my outlines, and it's got my pictures and my graphics and my notes and code sometimes when we're talking about Pi programs or bash scripts or whatever. And if you would like to avail yourself of it, I open it all day on Drama Fridays and on request if you need it. I still don't have it as secure as I would like it. It's self-hosted right here on right behind my camera, and I'm a little concerned about hackage. I don't care if anybody gets in and hacks that server and destroys it, but the worst case, it's a gateway potential into the rest of my network that has my real stuff, and I don't care to share that with anybody or have it destroyed at this time. Pi R square, just the letter R, at .zapto.org. It's hosted by the noip.com DDNS environment. So it's really cool.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was going back. I had to. You open this, it shrinks down everything else.
I know. Yeah, it's like
remember, because I'm not running 3 monitors. I run one all the time here.
Really, you're doing this on a single monitor?
Every week.
Wow.
I have a second monitor, but I use it exclusively for Pis.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. It's a room thing. My desk is only so big.
Whereas mine is grande.
That's right. Mas grande. So last week we did 2 things.
Right.
We I did a fresh install, or at least discussed how to do a fresh install of Raspberry Pi OS. I may do that once or twice more, but for future projects, I'm not going to run you through how to do that at the beginning of every project. It kills 15 or 20 minutes, and you can go back and see it in the old archives. And then as we get new faces come in, every 2 or 3 months as projects go by, I'll run through that. And about every 2 or 3 months, Raspberry Pi makes a change anyways and an improvement on the installation. So it's worth that. But we did that. And then the big project of the day last week was installing a product called Box 86 on the Raspberry Pi. We've got Raspberry Pi OS. Box 86 is an emulator program. It makes the Raspberry Pi look, it's a program that makes pieces of the Raspberry Pi look like a Linux installation on an x86 box. So there's lots of Linux programs out there that are written to run on x86 boxes that are not yet ported over to run on Raspberry Pi. Well, if you've got this Box 86, many of them will run. There's always the odd exception, of course. And then I finished that project. There wasn't a ton of time left in the show to do all the other cool things that we want to do. So I touched on element number 2, overclocking. So where we're going to go today is we're going to complete our discussion of overclocking and of cooling. And that's going to chew up most of the time. I can shrink it down so that it doesn't, but the whole goal of this series, what was hopefully going to be a 1-part series and then a 2-part series, but something happened a couple days ago that mandatorily made this a 3-part series. I apologize for that, but this was something beyond my control. The whole goal here was, let's run some cool programs that are designed to run on x86 Linux distros on our Raspberry Pi. And I had 2 of them in mind, the cool one, the monster one, Steam and Steam games.
Right.
So last night I installed the Steam client to write up the lab. And man, everything just blew up all over the place. I couldn't log in. I couldn't shut down, short of pulling the power plug. I couldn't connect to it with PuTTY. So I pulled the plug on it and I started the rebuild from scratch process. And then I went and reviewed the tutorial to see what I missed. I didn't miss anything, but I refreshed it and there was a new notice on it.
Oh no. Oh
That
no.
notice was posted last Friday while we were doing the show. And it said, ignore everything about the Steam installation on here. Something has changed and it no longer works. We will work on it and come up with a fix, a solution, whatever.
Wait.
We
So
can't place it. Yeah, I went and looked for all kinds of alternatives on some of the
no
other
longer works
emulators.
as in like dead, gone, boom.
At the moment, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Harsh, man.
that's an abandon. But I had a second really cool one in mind. It's come up as a result of some questions from at least one person on here, and I've wanted to do it for a while myself. I said, okay, cool. They make Zoom, a Zoom client for x86 Linux. I'll do that. And so I started doing the install, and then I looked around and realized, wait a minute, I don't have a camera or microphone for that. It would be utterly pointless. So I'm moving that to next week. I've got a new camera coming in and built-in mic, and that'll take care of that. So we're going to run Zoom on Raspberry Pi next week. And the big question, that's not a real difficult thing to do. The real challenge for everybody is performance. So you got to overclock it. And then as soon as you overclock it and you run Zoom, that's a real high CPU utilization program. It gets hot and it slows down. So got to cool it. So that's what we're doing today. We do overclocking and cooling, and that enables Zoom to run stabilizedly on the Pi, and everything will be cool and copacetic. And I'll pick one or two other programs, and you can pick one or two other programs if you like, and send me an email.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So this week we're cooling and overclocking. That's one of those things where the steps to do it are very, very quick. The background, a little bit of explanation goes on.
Okay. All right. Sounds like a great plan.
I got a couple news of the weeks. I'll do those, and then we'll go back and check questions, and then we'll get started on project. So
all right.
I just did news of the week. The resource archive is up. pirsquare.zapto.org. Still waiting for the cooling stack for my 5-node Bramble. It's been 2 weeks. I ordered out of China, so a few more weeks. That'll be cool. Last night, while I was working on the rebuild and waiting for labs, that was actually the really big deal. I've got some labs that I'm going to show you and show you how to do. A couple people on here, per the earlier chat, we're running into some issues being able to run YouTube videos, not YouTube, Udemy videos on Raspberry Pi. So I offered up my first thought, which was to install Widevine. And of course, sorry, I'm not looking at the feed, so I'm losing names, but whoever that was said they just did an upgrade, and everything worked, didn't need Widevine. But I tried Widevine yesterday on this computer with it overclocked and without. It's a couple labs. And I was using Chromium, and I was watching a 4K YouTube video that I shot a year and a half ago or so. And it wasn't smooth. I thought this really ought to be smooth. I'm cool enough temperature-wise, and I've got the thing overclocked to 2 gigahertz. This ought to look smooth. So, and I had installed Widevine just assuming I needed that. So I downloaded the current version of Firefox for Raspberry Pi. If you want to do that, sudo apt install Firefox-ESR, no spaces. It's the long-term support version. And ran it on there. And it was just like watching it on my regular PC desktop. It was a hugely different performance improvement. So that's one test under my belt. I'm going to go with, I still like Chromium, but suddenly I maybe, there is no Brave for Raspberry Pi yet. I beg them every week and they ignore me every week.
Those dirty rats.
Yeah, but I'll be bouncing back and forth then between Firefox and Chromium on my Pi to see what makes me happier.
Sounds good.
I did the Steam news, did the Zoom news. That's all the news that's fit to print. Let's check the the questions, and I want to come back and talk about a question that Alice Pottsy asked on Mike's Wednesday show. I told her I would give her an answer today.
Okay.
Haven't seen her name yet, but I do have an answer for her.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. You find any questions while I was yakking?
No, people are harassing me about my electric car.
Good. Well, I see Zach's here.
Zach is here. Yeah.
Sorry, I got to read it.
I know this.
I can't do the mic thing and just skip. I got to know what people said, so
Yeah,
I'll speed read it.
I'm with you.
Wow, Dave. I do need at least 2 screens and in a real productive environment, especially. But
yeah, and of course, with the office, we have 2 or 3 or 4
exactly.
screens. So it'll be interesting. But while you're reading,
I'm listening.
One of the things that Mike announced last week and has actually done is we're going back to the office. So a lot of us are in our first or second vaccine regimen, and it's a little safer to be around people. And man, I'm just gonna. Mike has already reopened the studio. He's shooting the Security Plus 601 video series, and I've
so
actually
exciting.
Yeah, I've gone down to I've done 2 AMAs with Mike from the studio because I'm still masked because I had only had 1 shot at that point, and there were too many other people around. Right. But yeah,
Mike was talking about 1 more week in there to shoot for him. Are you planning on joining him for those 2?
Yeah, probably. We were so frustrated with the lag and the difference between a cable modem connection and our fiber connections at home is so dramatic.
Sounds like a call to Dudley. Total needs fiber.
Unfortunately, we can't get fiber at the office, so
of course not.
We need to change the office.
Yeah, well, we'll go satellite.
From the orbital Q.
Yeah, I saw that magnetic fishing thing last week. That's kind of cool. Hey, anybody who cares, by the way, Lyrids start tonight. You won't see much out tonight. It lasts for about 2 weeks. It's going to peak on the 22nd. This is looking like a good year. They're thinking 100 meteors per hour on the 22nd. Anytime between midnight and dawn. I love to watch meteor showers, so I keep track of that stuff. So
yeah, unfortunately, I live downtown Houston, where the light pollution is so high, I can't see anything. I can literally not even see the North Star. It's that bright.
That's pretty bright.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that your house faces south.
There is that, yes. I can walk around the corner, Dave.
Oh, there is
that talent.
Let's see. Wrong song, wrong snag. I'm not coming home. Yeah, so I saw. Let me shout a little more. I saw you had a long time getting home after your vaccine yesterday, huh?
So it was actually the Wednesday show. I got on Discord afterwards.
That's what it was.
And I was on for a few minutes, and I'm like, I'm gonna run home. It'll take me 20 minutes. No problem. An hour later, I finally got home. I mean, it was like, what just happened? I have no idea. So yeah, it just took forever to get home.
Hey, I'm going to the office on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I got a message from one of our production people, a guy you folks haven't met yet. His name is Zach. He is the kind of the top technical guy and
on our video side
in our production environment.
Yep.
And I have a reputation of having eclectic stuff. And so he sent me a message and said, hey, do you have any caution tape? And so I sent him a picture of the 3 rolls of caution tape that I have. Don't ask me why. It's just one of those things that, it cost a nickel while I was at an auction or something. So who knows when you don't need caution tape. I love setting up for Halloween, and that seemed like a viable tool for Halloween. And nice. So he says, I've got an idea about a shot for Mike. Well, if it involves caution tape, Mike, and you, I'll be there. So we worked out the logistics. I'm going to stop down at the office on Tuesday because I got to go down near Hobby on Tuesday anyways. So
Okay.
I don't know what he's got in mind. He's not sharing, but this ought to be interesting. Ekmo, how we doing on time here? It's 40. Batteries are good on the microphone. Okay, I'm not too far from the end.
No, we're fine. We're fine. So it turns out, since it came up in the chat, electric cars suffer from range issues, right? Because the battery only does so much. The faster you go, the shorter your range. So the fact that it took me more than an hour to get home, driving home on Wednesday meant I had tons of range left. So definitely not an issue.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's the same for just about everything. Any kind of traditional motors, gas motors, even jets. The faster we go in the jet, the less range we have. Unless you go fast enough to get up into the jet stream and pick up an extra 100 miles an hour.
Right. And at 238, I'm jumping down the stream.
Yeah, I'm at 236, so we're close.
Mr. G says, hey, everyone, literally just got back from my A+ Core 2 D for diploma for me. Yo.
Ah, sweet. Congratulations, Mr. G. That's great.
Congratulations, man. That's great. That's exciting.
Oh, wait, my Maroon 237 just before. My Maroon 5 bad pun count is past a dozen by this timestamp. I'm not through with you. That's cool. You know, you take the bulk of the population and they know 3 Maroon 5 songs.
Right.
So to come up with 5 is pretty impressive. And I can't say I know more than their big 3 songs. We got tickets to Maroon 5 and then had to do something, so we gave them away. But I said, give me a shirt. So I didn't actually attend. Zach says, are these meteorites just in USI? You can see them all over the world.
Right.
And same time period. They're still best no matter where you are on the planet. Between midnight and dawn is the best viewing time.
Huh.
I'll have to contact my supervisor.
Sounds like the best place to see them would be Alaska.
I doubt it. Because first of all, Alaska is really heavily forested, right? So you got to get out of the way of the trees. And then you got all that white snow. That's like reverse light pollution.
True. So
Gobi Desert.
I'm headed that way tomorrow, man.
Okay, sweet.
I'll let you know.
Ride the dromedaries while you're there. Or back to where is my paycheck? Yeah, exactly. In your pocket, says Tullowit.
Right.
Oh, you're such a jerk to him sometimes. Jason Helms. Well, I got to do that Jesse Helms every time I see it. Sorry about that. I know he's a political figure and not loved by half the population. So it wasn't an Apple car. Oh, God.
Definitely not this half of the population.
But he does hook up the battery from his Apple phone sometimes to the car.
Yep.
All right. So Andre Hutz. Yeah, I'm going to finish up here at 2:43 for a while. Andrew Hutz saw a meteor shower out in the Negev in Israel. Yeah, that would be right. Lots of places in the Middle East. I used to go when I lived in Saudi during meteor showers. We had lots and lots of desert areas to go out. There's no light pollution if you go out far enough. I missed it, Tullowit. Okay. So Alice isn't here. Somebody fill her in. I'll fill her in when we see her on Discord, but I got a question. I got to get it off my plate. I don't want to answer it again next week.
Okay.
So Alex asked, just as we were nearing the end of Mike's AMA on Wednesday, 2 days ago, which is, excuse me, the best software to build a honeypot on Raspberry Pi? And this question came up, I remember, about a year ago. I thought I'd go look in the archives, and let's look at it with fresh eyes and see if anything has happened in the last year. And the best one that I came up with last year was from a site called Anomaly. Let me put this up. Yeah, this one, Honeypot links. Honeypot links. Sounds like a cereal.
How the heck do you spell anomaly?
It's not spelled correctly anyways. Anomaly is usually with an I or with a Y. Okay, so here's an Anomaly site. Now, this guy wrote up a tutorial, which is on the second, I guess the third, if you want to call it here, link, where he discussed his premise here at this middle link. And his premise was there are 4 programs that he runs simultaneously on Raspberry Pis to make a really tempting and really functional internal honeypot. It's not designed for external access. It's designed to solve a problem that Alice had also asked about last week. She asked what an APT was. Excuse me. Can't remember what the A is for. It's in my notes. I'll get back to it in a second. Present threat. It's a persistent threat. It's a long-term threat or attack where somebody internal usually is cleaning out the data on your server, doing lots of downloads, maybe doing lots of damage, lots of erasures, things like that. So there's a 4-function honeypot here that's designed to attract those persistent threat bad actors. So here in the middle link, he discussed it. And here in this third link is the step-by-step tutorial on how to implement it. Up here, we've got another honeypot, rabbit hole. It is a kind of a rabbit hole, a honeypot for Raspberry Pi that has come on the scene in the last year. So again, I thought it was kind of a good thing to pop into. Let me go back to my notes now and get the highlights out of a couple of these things. So there it is, drama. So that first one is a honeypot called, amazingly, HoneyPi. One word, no spaces, no E at the end. Very simple to install. It's a very simple honeypot. It sets up an FTP server, a Telnet server, and a VNC server. It's all it does. And it scans all ports for attacks all the time. And it rings bells and sends emails and sends texts whenever an attacker is detected. And of course, it's very tempting. It looks like you're connected to an FTP server or to a VNC server, whatever. And that's the whole point of a honeypot, right? You want to have something for somebody to attack. Right. They're just wasting their time. Meantime, you're watching them, and you're also using this to learn what kind of attacks people are trying to do on your systems.
Right.
So that's HoneyPi. Get that at the first link that I had up.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is no name for that other one at the Anomaly site. It's a guy who wrote it up, Advanced Persistent Threat. That's what we are protecting for. Long-running internal attacks.
Right.
Okay, good. That finishes that up. Next thing on my notes is the project. So let's take a look at last questions.
Okay.
Then get fired up on overclocking and cooling. Not much has happened while I did that.
Nope.
You guys are paying attention. Hey, good. Thanks for the likes. Please hit that thumbs up button as you get this, whether you're watching it live or real time. It's helpful to other people. Mike keeps saying it's helpful to advertising. It's not. It's helpful to help other people
searching
find our stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to disagree with Mike. I'm sure Mike is absolutely right in everything he said.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Mr. Vice President.
Super fun car. Ugh. You got your sights on another one though, right?
I'm going back to another Mini Cooper S. That's what I'm going to do. Or a Mazda Miata.
As long as they're electric.
Neither one are electric, unfortunately. But the Nissan Leaf is actually Katie's car, so.
Yeah, because if you plug it in down at the office, it blows breakers.
It did. It totally did. I plugged it in outside and it was like poof, happened.
No, I have not heard of CrowPi. Remind me about that on Discord after the show, because I'm not going to take notes right now. I'm going to dive right into this thing. All right, so last week we installed Box 86. In and of itself, if it just sits there, it's an installed program, it's not running, it doesn't suck up a lot of memory, it doesn't suck up a lot of CPU horsepower. But when we try to run a Linux for x86 program on there, well, now a couple things happen. The Linux program itself, he sucks up horsepower and memory, and the emulator program, the Box 86 program, has to grow in memory and use up CPU horsepower. And that can be a real problem. So let me show you a site where a gent does some overclocking and cooling and does some comparisons of that thing. It's tough to figure out which order to present these in. So I'm going to, oops, is that the one I want? Yeah, that'll work. Almost there. There it is. So this is the tutorial that we used last week. It's got 3 things in it: a brief mention of cooling, but it's got the installation of Box 86, it's got the installation of the Steam client, and then it's got the installation of Steam games. And then that's the one that changed on Friday that says, forget it, the Steam stuff doesn't work. And then this is a different site that I want you to check out when you get a chance, howtoraspberrypi.com. How to overclock a Pi. He's got some really interesting stuff on cooling and overclocking, and I'm going to show you that, and we're going to do some of that. In fact, I'm going to show you his site right now.
All right, sounds good.
He said as if he could actually do it. Yeah, okay, this is the site to share. Okay, so without going through all this junk up on top, I'll do that a little bit. There is a program out there called Stressberry. It runs all 4 cores at the core's maximum speed. The cores built into Raspberry Pi 3s and Raspberry Pi 4s have 4 cores in them. This blue line shows you the temperature of the CPU while the program is running. The yellow line shows you the speed as the CPU is running. And so we use the stress testing program he did to say, tell you what, I'm just going to measure the CPU clock for 1 minute. And you can see over here on the right-hand side, this is the clock frequency range for measuring yellow stuff. Over on the left-hand side is the temperature range for the blue stuff. And then down across the bottom is how long this test is run. So he ran it for 1 minute without stress testing it. And the temperature on his particular installation looks like it ran around 47 degrees or so. At some point, the CPU spiked up to its maximum speed of 1.5 gigahertz, 1500 megahertz. And most of the time it was running down here around 700 or 600 megahertz. That's the usual idle time. And then after 1 minute, the stress test program kicked in. So the CPU says, I gotta crank myself up to maximum speed, and notice that it was able to maintain the entire speed as the stress test was causing the temperatures to go up to about 75 degrees Celsius. Then the stress test stopped. They ran it for another minute. It cooled things down very quickly. And what we're looking at here is a Raspberry Pi that has no normal cooling or no abnormal cooling systems on it. This is just a basic Pi with an air-cooled CPU. So then it was set it left the maximum speed at 1.5 gigahertz. So the next thing he did was to overclock it. There's a little config file. I'll show you how to do that. And he put these 2 lines in that config file that allows the maximum speed to go up to 2 gigahertz. And he ran the same test without a third-party cooling solution, and look what happens. The test starts running up to and raising the temperature. The CPU runs at 2000 megahertz, 2 gigahertz for a while, and then this temperature got so high it hit 85 degrees that the CPU said, oh, I got to throttle. And so it drops back to 1500 megahertz. And as the temperature cools down a little bit in there, it said, okay, I'm cool enough to run again at full speed. So it jumps back up, lasts for a couple of seconds and says, nope, it's too hot. I got to go back down. And we get this kind of never ending cycle. At some point it said, I've been running too hot for too long. I can't cool down very long. I'm going to stay slow for a full, that looks like about a minute here. And I'll try again. And then finally he said, you know what? I abandoned. The temperature is above 85 all the time, even when I'm running a lesser load. So this is no good trying to run the CPU overclocked without some kind of third-party cooling solution, something better than stock. So he tried 4 different types of cooling solutions. You can go online and buy these little aluminum thin heat sinks. They got a little thermal tape on the bottom of them for a couple of bucks, literally $2-3. Excuse me. So he applied those, ran the same test, and you can see up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, long time down, up, down, long time down. So they're not a very effective cooling solution for an overclocked Pi.
Gotcha. Okay.
So here's a big old hunk of aluminum. It contacts all of the hot chips. Well, let's look at the results here. It worked fine for a while, but eventually it loaded up with so much heat that it couldn't dissipate the heat, and we wound up with just about the same result as the aluminum cooling fins. It at least kept going up a little bit. So I don't rate this thing looking at this as particularly effective. I also am uncomfortable with this kind of total coverage chunk of metal because it's going to block the Wi-Fi antenna, which is a tiny little, almost a circuit on the board, and the Bluetooth antenna.
Okay. All right. So what's
here's
the
final
solution, man?
Yeah, there's others. So here's mine. This is the ice tower. I can't move my system very well, but I'm gonna kill this for a second and move you to another share.
Okay, sounds good.
That one. Hey, this is gonna be good. Click this. This is a photograph that I took about an hour before we started the show.
Okay.
So if I reach my right hand out 45 degrees and raise it about 20 degrees above the horizon, that's the system I'm running on. This green box down here is a Kali Linux box that I have unplugged right now. And this thing is kind of cool. It's got a couple of mounting brackets that mount on some holes that exist on the Raspberry Pi. Here's a mounting bracket that goes on the other side. On the bottom of this thing is a chunk of aluminum, and it sits on a thermal pad, which sits on top of the CPU. And then we crank all these things down so we get good solid contact. And now we got our ice tower working.
So the true effectiveness of the ice tower is the RGB, right?
Absolutely. I was stunned. I didn't realize when I bought it that it had RGB. I'm working late at night playing with this thing, and wow, it's pretty. So I guess you can. I didn't realize when I bought mine that you could buy them in silver or black. So we got this radiator here. We've got these things called heat pipe. This is a little U-shaped thing that goes down to the chunk of metal, comes back up here, goes through a bunch of cooling fins. So it draws the heat off of the CPU, radiates them through the large fins and many fins in here, and then this blows the heat away from the fins. So is it an effective solution? Let's see here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's dramatic.
The stress test running 2 gigahertz for the entire time, and the thing never broke 50 degrees.
Wow. Okay, yeah. That's a dramatic difference.
It's huge. And this is the same fan. It's a 40 millimeter fan that the author did with a little 3D printed mount that he made.
Yeah.
And it's almost identical. If I could have found that mount, if he'd sold it, I'd have bought 10.
So, all right. So let's go back to your original dislike of the
big chunk of metal.
Big chunk of metal. Would that cooling fan that's sitting?
I imagine that would help dramatically.
Would it block the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signal, or?
Well, I think the metal certainly does. But if you had a plastic fan, it's not going to get any worse. So, I mean, it's not going to be total blockage. You're going to get it. Mike uses a fan, a case called a FLIRC, FLIRC, forward-looking infrared case. And it's a metal case, 100% metal enclosure that has a little drop-down square in the middle of it, right about here, that contacts the CPU, and then the whole case becomes a giant heat sink. And he says it works very well for temperature management. And I have yet to ask him what the impact is. Can he get far away from his WAP or his Bluetooth stuff by getting through all that metal? I don't know the answer to that.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. So if you're going to overclock this thing and make it run at the high overclocked frequencies, we need cooling. That's the long and short of it.
Right. Yeah. Sounds good.
So let me show you, talk a little bit about overclocking and then show you how to do the overclocking. And then I'm going to show you how to get and use that stress testing and graphing program, because it's completely available and it works like a dream for everyone. Oh, Scott asked a question when we broached this topic last week about, are we going to talk about active and passive? And of course, we just did, but we didn't apply names to those. So whenever you're just trying to radiate heat away, if you're just letting it roast off of the top of the CPU lid, if you're just going to put chunks of aluminum fins on it, or the big old chunk of metal, or Mike's FLIRC case, those are all passive. They just radiate as much heat as they can into the air. Active is when we take some kind of medium, air, liquid, or whatever, heat it, and then blow some air over it, or some other cooling methodology, and actively cool it to a temperature that's cooler than room temperature. So the ice tower and that little home-built fan, it's the word that I want there, jig, that he created, that's an active solution. I've seen water solutions for Raspberry Pis. I saw one recently on a cluster. It was really cool. Instead of stacking their cluster, they laid them out on a board in a circle and put water blocks on each of the CPUs, and they all fed into a big central radiator with a fan on it. It was a very pretty thing. I should have taken a picture.
Very, very cool. So yeah. Zach suggested in the feed that you should try and contact the guy who made the jig, and because we can print that out on our one
exactly
of our
right. In fact, that is exactly my intent to do so this week.
Awesome.
So when you are selecting a cooling solution, there are at least 5 trade-offs. These are the ones that I just came up off the top of my head. I think it probably covers most of them. Number 1 is performance. Does it make my system run cool enough to accomplish what I want, to run the programs that I want for as long as I want?
Right.
Then there's a size issue. Will they fit in a case? Do I have to buy a special case for it? Are they caseless? Are they self-inclusive of a case?
Are you saying that size matters?
Others have said that to me. I make no such claim. And then the big compromise, cost.
Mm-hmm.
How much is this thing going to cost me? My ice tower is $30. That FLIRC case is about 20. That thing that the guy printed is probably less than 40 cents.
Huh. Wow.
Here's one that terrified me. As I read about this thing before I purchased it and after I purchased it and before I ever installed it, is what's the noise? Right, I got a spinning fan on there.
Especially a 40 millimeter fan.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the bigger the fan, the quieter it is, because you can spin it slower and get more things. And the usual fan size when you buy a Raspberry Pi is a 30 by 30 millimeter. So these are a little bigger. They can run a little quieter. And the ice tower is kind of cool. It was designed with something in mind. We got a ground wire on there and we got a plus voltage wire on there. And the fan that was provided for that will run on either 5 volts at max speed or at 3.3 volts at a lesser speed. So if you don't need all that cooling, you could plug the red wire into one of the 3.3 volt pins and run it slower and quieter. And if you need the more power at the risk of, or more cooling at the risk of higher noise, then you run it on a 5 volt pin. So I started by plugging it into the 5 volt pin, Hearing is not what it used to be, but I can't hear it.
Huh. Okay.
Oh, I'm
Cool.
loving the thing. And then for me, I added this fifth element. Is there an impact on wireless functionality?
There are so many puns that will come out of the 5 sentences you just said.
I'm sure they will all appear in the feed. All right, so let me show you how to overclock. I'm just not going to
Okay,
get
all right,
into
yeah.
all the overclocking. I'm going to just show you the mechanics of it, and then we'll talk about overclocking and what needs to be
here.
done. I'm
Yes.
sorry, I'm cutting you off.
Stick with the technology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the joke.
Let's see.
All right. How do we overclock a pie, man?
Checking my notes here. All right. In the early days when overclocking became possible for the Raspberry Pi,
Okay.
there was a bunch of configuration entries that you would change in a configuration file in the Raspberry Pi. It's in a folder called whack boot in a file called config.txt.
Okay.
And that was for the wildcatters. Wildcatters are people who are ready, willing, and able to experiment with all these settings one at a time. I'm going to change this. Now I'm going to check the results. And then I'm going to change it again. Or then I'm going to change this. And you could spend months coming up with a solution that's fast and stable. There's voltages that you have to change here and there and there. And you have to change the RAM and you got to change GPU. Ugh. Well, then they made it a little easier. A little easier. There is this utility that we've seen before called Raspy config.
Mm-hmm.
You get it at it from the command line and you say sudo Raspy config, and there's an entry called performance. And it's a really simple entry. All you do is go in there and select, I want regular, medium, or high. Medium is a little overclocked, high is max overclock.
Right.
And it would make the appropriate entries in the configuration file for you. You say yes, system reboots, and now it's in overclock mode.
Okay.
That doesn't work on Raspberry Pi 4 because they have made Raspberry Pi 4 so simple. Let me just fire up a connection to a Raspberry Pi 4.
Okay.
And share it with you. Click, click, click. This one we want to do with the GUI just because there's some pretty cool stuff to see here. Changing the file is no big trick, but some other things that I want to show you are. So I'm going to sudo.
You make
I
that
didn't change the font on this so that you can see. Stand by.
Thank you.
I forgot they changed. Yeah, there it is. Okay, monospace is fine. And I think we've tried 14 on here.
Maybe a little bigger.
Okay, I'll go 16. I know we found 18 is too big.
Yeah. All right.
Should be big enough. I'll talk through it. So, okay, so I'm going to edit that file. Sudo nano config, nope, boot config.txt. So this file gets read every time the computer boots up, and it gets configured based on the contents of this file. Down at the very bottom of the file, almost at the very bottom.
Hold on. Let me clarify that. The Pi reads this file and configures itself according to the parameters in this file.
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
And it happens during boot up, which means any changes that we make now don't count unless we reboot the Pi.
Gotcha.
All right. So these two lines are defaults in the system. We got this pound sign at the beginning, which means it's a comment line. It says if you want to overclock the Pi, you've got to change this next line. The default maximum speed of the CPU in this Pi 4 and this version of Raspberry Pi OS, the most current, is 700 megahertz. Even though the chip is rated for 1.5 gigahertz, its base speed is 700. And so they give you an option. If you want to mess around, they say you could get rid of that remark # and bump it to 800. But if you look at all the tutorials out there, you can run this thing theoretically as high as 2,147 megahertz, 2.147 gigahertz. But that's not stable. So most of the people have discovered that running it at a max speed of 2,000 megahertz or 2 gigahertz is a good stable speed. Now, there's not enough voltage in the CPU to support that. Normal voltage inside the CPU is 2. And when you are a wildcatter and you start experimenting with voltage increases, you start in increments, you work in increments of 0.025 volts. So if I want to bump this thing up right off the bat to 2,000 megahertz, and I don't know a safe voltage for it, I'm going to try 2.025 volts and reboot it and see what happens. And it probably won't boot. There's not enough voltage. The good news about this file is if this thing won't boot, it's okay. It's in a FAT32 partition, so you can pull the micro SD card out, put it into a regular computer, and edit that file from the regular computer to fix it.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
And I did that yesterday when everything exploded with Steam just to see if it was the overclocking problem. I took it back to the defaults.
Okay.
So it turns out in order to pull off 2 gigahertz, we need an over voltage of 6. It's a supported value, so we're off and good. So we bump the voltage on here with this entry. We bump the CPU frequency to a max of 2,000. It won't run at 2,000 megahertz all the time. It runs at idle speed, 600, 700, 800, until you say, I need you to work hard for me. And then he says, okay, I'm going to ramp the speed up until the project is done or until I get too hot and I have to throttle back. And then since we were going to game, we bumped the GPU frequency from 500 to 750 megahertz. So I made those changes in that file. Saved it, rebooted the machine, and then I came in and I started doing the same testing. Now, before I did that, I tested it at the base frequencies using the same techniques that our cooling guy did. Let me show you that.
Sure.
Kind of cool.
And I assume you'd also done the cooling part, right, at this point?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Hold that thought, and
we'll
my little graphic here will show you exactly that.
Okay.
Okay, we'll zoom that. I know you can't see it yet. It's okay. All right, now we go to the sharer screen. Click. How are we doing here? Good. Quarter after. We're in great shape. So I did 4 tests. 1, base frequency, no cooling. Another one, base frequency with the ice tower at max.
Okay.
And then I did it again at max frequency on the CPU, no cooling, and then again at max. So this is the first one.
Okay.
Base frequency, maximum speed, 1.5 gigahertz, no cooling. Now, when I say no cooling, that's not really true. It's not really fair. The ice tower was installed on it, but I didn't have the fan running. So I still got some good passive cooling going on.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you can see when it was running at idle, it was here in my office, room temperature is about 71 Fahrenheit, so about 21 or 22 Celsius. And it ran here at about 40 degrees. Started the stress test, jammed the CPU all the way up to max power. Temperatures climbing, peaked out at around 55 Celsius. So it never throttled. It won't throttle until the temperature hits about 85 degrees. So okay, that's kind of cool at 1.5 gigahertz. The last minute, the stress test stops. It keeps measuring for another minute and running down at around 800 megahertz, 700 megahertz, sometimes 6. Okay, that's fair.
Okay.
Now let's turn the fan on the ice tower. Still max CPU speed of 1500. Pretty similar looking, except instead of running from 40 degrees up to the low 50s, we started at 35 degrees and we barely broke 42.
Nice.
So
Okay.
yeah, that's nice. We're not even overclocking here, and it just runs really cool, full power, all time, all 4 cores cranking away. So now let's bump the CPU max speed to 2000, and we'll unplug the fan and just let it passively work. So he said, I'm doing my thing here. I'll start out. It's passive, so it's around 42 degrees inside. Start the stress test. It starts right up at 50 degrees and kept on climbing throughout the stress test. So I don't know how much further it would have gone if I let the stress test run longer, but still never broke 70, about 67. So even if I don't have the fan running on that thing with max processing power really cooking on this thing, it doesn't get anywhere near the throttling temperature. Doesn't hit 70. But still, we got to know what happens when we turn the fan on. I got to know.
Nice.
Holy Hannah. That was just awesome. This is exactly as expected. Ran same kind of room temperature before the stress test starts, and then just rock stable at 52 degrees, give or take. So if you want your CPU to run overclocked, and if you're going to use that CPU at length, these were 10-minute tests, then you want a good cooling solution.
Nice.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with that.
Cool. Very graphical. I like it.
Thanks, man. Putting the time and effort into it.
Yep.
So let me show you how what did that just happen there? Okay. Let me show you how you could make similar kinds of graphs. It's a really cool thing. On a tutorial with a list. Yeah, this one. Share you this link. This is the same link that was the second link on the last slide that I showed you. But I'll show this to you as a standalone link this time because I'm a nice guy. This is that web page that I was showing you. He's got his graphs on there. And okay, if you have to, do what you got to do. Just give us a big wave and let us know.
I will.
Okay, so here's a website that is the one that I was just showing you. He's got the graphs, and he's the guy with the 4 different cooling solutions. And there's a lot more in that article, and you're going to want to check that out because what he's given us in there is a program. Let me show it to you. Let me unshare, quit out of that thing. Go over to his site. This is the downside of one monitor. I got to go through all these tabs and programs.
Or if you had a plethora of monitors, like
that's right, like yourself,
then you could just go click, click, click.
All right, so on this page, down at the bottom, I think for him, did he do it up on top? Yeah. He's got a series of steps on how to create and install the stress testing program and send the output to a file, and then another program that's actually already built in here that will read that file and generate these graphical charts that you saw. So I'm not going to do all these things. They're done. You will need to either start with sudo su before you do these things, or proceed each of these lines with sudo. So sudo apt install python 3-pip, and then sudo pip uninstall numpy. This is one line. It looks like 2. So we got a sudo apt get all this stuff and this libtiff5 and stress. So when you run this line, copy and paste the entire 2 lines. Don't try it as one. I missed that the first time out and couldn't figure out what was going on with libtiff. And then the last step, all of this is done just so that we can install this Stressberry program using the pip installer. And now you can run the Stressberry program. It's Stressberry run in very simple terms -h, but he's given us some parameters here. It says Stressberry run -n. This is the name of the test that you're going to run. So I ran 4 tests last night, and I called each one Node 1, Node 2, Node 3, and Node 4. Here's how long we run the test for in seconds. So 300 seconds, 10 minutes. That's a 5-minute test. Doesn't matter. And then take readings at 1-minute intervals. How many cores are we going to run here? 4 cores. And then this is the output file where we want to collect the data. You can call this thing anything you want. Fred.kimchi, whatever makes you happy. So you start this thing and you wait for 10 minutes. I know it says 300, but it's 10 minutes. And then when it's all done and takes you back to the prompt, then you run this program. Again, this is all just one line, copy, paste it. I don't remember if I had to sudo this or not, but it's probably better to do it. Just run that whole thing and it's going to read the node 1 output file. So whatever output file name you used here is what you use here. And then it's going to generate a graph in a PNG file based on whatever name you put there. So it's really powerful. It's really useful. It's really flexible. I wasn't aware of this before I started playing with this tutorial. I just followed all the instructions, copied and pasted everything, screwed this part up. But once I figured that part out, it all just worked. And it was pretty easy to figure out. If you want to change the name of your test and the name of the output file, works fine. So I would run a test and then I'd make a change, plug in the fan, run the test again, same parameters. When it's done, unplug the fan, change the boot config.txt file, run the test again. Now plug in the fan, run the test again, and use different names and different file names for each of these. And it generates these charts. So you want to know, I know I can just feel it in your heart, what's in that file? Let me show you, my friends.
And Dave, I will have to check out what's in that file in the archives. I'm
good.
I'm waiting kind of hard right now. So
okay. Get some sleep, get some aspirin, get some wine. I guess we won't expect to see you for drama or for Discord.
I'm gonna go redo my Tylenol. Hopefully that'll kick back in. Maybe I'll be there for Discord, although it's a Friday and I have my
you got your publisher meeting.
So anyway.
All right. So we'll see you when we see you. Glad you can make it this far. Thank you, Scott.
Take care, my friends.
All right. We'll see you later. Get better. Call me if you need anything in the weekend. He's still watching. He heard that. All right. Let me open up this little handy dandy file, notepad. File open. I know you can't see it. Stand by. You don't want to see this. This is just making sausage. It's in here. Overclocking. There we go. That's a node file. Oh, wow. Thinks it's a Wireshark capture. Okay, now I can share. Buzz, crank. So that program is running the stress test. And then it's just continuously outputting measurements. So this first minute of the first test, CPU is running 600 megahertz, 700 megahertz, 600s, 800s, and so forth. And then the stress test starts kicking in, 1500 megahertz, 1500 megahertz. And in a different place of the file, that's one of the really cool things about it, it's logging the frequencies or okay, here's the slowdown. We're done with the stress test, back down to 800s and 600. And then down, here's the name of the test. And then here's one of the other axes, temperature, and there's all the temperature things. So a little bit of a learning curve, but you could very easily create these. Oh, and then finally the time that each of these things were taken at. You could very easily create graphical charts like this. It doesn't take much to learn how to create this kind of a file. Okay, that closed, that closed. Quick cleanup here. And you can make performance graphs. You can do all kinds of things with these. Of course, you could also do it with Excel, right? All right, let me check one of the, oh yeah. So one other thing that I want to show you is 4 commands that you can use to check the frequency and or the temperature of your CPU. I showed you a couple of these last week, but here's all 4 of them. And then we'll run all 4 of these. Getting my share system up. There we go. So when your computer is running, an internal system every now and again polls the CPU and says, how you doing? What's your frequency right now? What's your temperature right now? And it writes those values to a file. So if we want to see those values when the polling last happened, we have to we have to look at the contents of the file. And then here's the location of that file, sys devices, who can remember all that? But there it is. The same thing happens with the temperature. This internal system periodically polls the CPU and says, what's your current temperature? And it writes the value of that. I don't remember the how frequently it does this poll job. If it's every second, every fraction of a second. I don't think it's every minute because I would run this many times, run, and got different values. So it's probably very, very quickly, multiple times per second. If you want to poll the CPU yourself, then you use the vcgen command. And we've got 2 of those. One that says run the measure clock subroutine and check the CPU. It's called ARM. And here's another one, the vcgen command. And it can just measure temp. It knows the only thing that I can measure in there is the CPU. So let's take a look at those 2 things on my, come on you. There we go. I think I've tried to run this before and I'm not able to copy out of here, but I've got it in my Yunk stuff. Bringing up the shared server again. Okay, I've got a good text box here. Let's share it with you. Yeah, I couldn't copy it out of there. I got to go copy it from the source. Stando bio. What are you doing? There. We go over here. We go into here. Find the VC stuff. Hang on, almost there. Oh, come on, you. I got to find the original document that it was in. Checking over here. This is where it is. VC. Am I lying? All right, I have 4 documents. Oh, heck. Get it straight out of the notes. There it is. Okay, this one will copy paste. Control C, back to the share, right click paste. There we go. So this is the one where we're going to read the file that gets updated when it polls. Brump. So we're checking speed there. It's idling right now, running 600,000 kilohertz, actually. So 600 megahertz. Add 3 zeros here, you get megahertz. or divide by 1,000. And if I want to get similar information, but more direct, since it's not doing much right now, we're not going to expect to see a whole lot of change here. Now that I've copied and pasted those. Yeah, see, in just that little time, some background processes said, I got to make the CPU work a little harder. So he's running at 800. What's the last polling? Back to 600. Let's poll it again. 700, 600, 600. Let's poll directly. 600. Let's run a program. While it's loading, we'll check the temperature. Move this over here. Yeah, it's loading now. I hope it's loading. I wonder if I have to double click that. Oh, there it comes. There we go. It's running the full 2 gigahertz while it's loading up here. 2 gigahertz, 2 gigahertz, and it's all loaded up and done. It's back down to 700 megahertz. How about the frequency? Same process. We can cat the temperature file. Cat, remember, means display the contents of a file. Okay, it's running 38 degrees. I've got the ice tower on. I got the fan running. Let's try and bring up a YouTube page on here. "41 degrees, 38 degrees, 40 degrees, 40 degrees. Still dragging it up really slow, huh? There we go. 39 degrees, 39. I'll bring up a different page. So it doesn't take a lot of processing power. This thing is mostly using its network card to load that page. So bouncing around between 38 and 41 degrees. And again, we could poll it directly ourselves with a vcgen command. And let's find something. Yeah, let's start a video. That'll take a little bit of processing going on. All right, I'll hit that one. Enter. 39 degrees, 40 degrees, 40. Come on, I expect you a little warmer. There we go. 41, 42. So it takes a little bit more CPU horsepower to run this. 44, we almost got to. But again, that cooling solution is so good. It's going to look a little jumpy to you because I'm going through 3 different generations of regenerator software. The CPU is running full power here, 2000 megahertz. All right, you get the idea. So it's pretty simple stuff. Let's stop YouTube here, close that out, stop the share. So that's going to complete today's presentation. We've done overclocking, we've done cooling, we did last week the box 86. So we're at kind of a standstill basically because of my all hands on deck project. It prevented me from going and pursuing the research that I usually do every night, and I would have found the problem with Steam sooner, and I would have selected another package that we could run. So I don't have a big project on my plate next week. Lots of little projects that don't take up time. I'll have everything up and cooking, and we will run programs designed to run on Linux x86 boxes next week. I'll pick 2 or 3 of them. And there's even some, I'm not even going to start all that nonsense. It's cool stuff. So let's go over and see what's happened to the question pool while I was gone. We got a little more than half an hour left in the show. My battery looks good on my wireless mic. I added a little memory item here on my computer to crank that up every now and again. Okay, good. I got everything there that I needed to cover as far as slides go and as pictures go. So that's all caught up. Wonderbar. All right, so I left off at about 2:49 or so. Yeah, there it is. And I got plenty of time to catch up on all of it. And it looks like much of it was still more talk about Scott's electric car passing 251. It was funny. Scott brings his car down. Everybody goes ooh and ah. And then he decided that he's going to have to go home later in the day. There's a 120 volt charger. So he plugs it into a plug in one part of the building, and 4 offices that are interconnected went down, no power. So we unplugged it from here. From there, we went and found the breaker box in the building and reset it. And then he plugged it into a plug in the kitchen, which has a fridge and a coffee pot and all that good stuff. And of course, the whole kitchen came down. So he was fairly low on power. We left the kitchen unplugged for a few hours so that he would have enough power to get his car to a Nissan dealership that had a charger and was only about a mile or two away. So he went there and he charged it up for 15, 20 minutes, something like that, and then was able to drive home and plug it into his regular charger back at the house. Very fun day. 258, RedTube. Love the show, guys. Thanks. Sorry, I'm saying goodbye to RedTube, who left 35 minutes ago. So, bye. If you come back and watch the rest of this. Jason Helms, 259, was talking to Scott. So I'm going to skip the @ stuff if you're not talking to me or you're not talking to Open General. Oh, it's talking to Andrew. Hey, a message for me at 3 o'clock from Zach. Dave Rush, I'm pretty sure if you ask him nicely, he'll give you the CAD file. Yes, right. So that's exactly what Scott said, and I certainly will ask him that. And I'll let him know that I featured him on the show today. I'm sure he'll get a big kick out of that. A lot of folks do. Hey, thanks for the likes. We've got about the same number of likes as people. We're pretty close to that. We got 3D. Yes, we got 3D printers 2 years ago at the office. In fact, a little longer ago than that. I bought one. Sorry about the beeping. It'll fix in a second. I bought one that I got scammed on. It wasn't working, but I'm an electrical engineer. I found the pieces and parts and rebuilt it, and we started doing that. But it's complicated. It was one of these old ones where you had to do a lot of fiddling and calibrating and things like that. So Scott and Mike had a video to shoot, an A+ video, and they didn't want to do all that fiddly stuff. So they bought one of these ones. It's all pre-configured and pre-calibrated. It's not as big as the monster that we have, but we printed some things on it. But I use my big monster, and I'm having a good time with that when I'm back in the office. Half of me can't wait to get back in the office, but it is between an hour and an hour and a half commute each way every day. So I'm not missing that at all. Passing 319, Scott got to redo his Tylenol. Yep, he had to bail. Yeah, there wasn't much going on here. I'm at the bitter end here. Scott Joseph. That takes me to the end. I'm not going to shut off this early. If we don't have much coming in, though, I will close down a little bit early. So got any more thoughts, any more comments, questions? I am open for them. In the meantime, what can I find on here? I have a lot of cool stuff up. Did that. Overclocking, cooling. Those are all documents that I don't need anymore. I've been very lucky with these dramas for the last few months. I haven't dropped anything. I haven't broken anything where I've had to leave the set or go crawling around under the desk or whatever. But I was planning ahead in case that ever did happen again. Oh man, there's some cool stuff. I gotta share this with you. I don't even remember where I got these pictures. Oh, you know what? I got these pictures a long time ago when I was prepping to do a dedicated overclocking or a dedicated cooling episode. So let me share this with you. This is cool. Other cooling solutions, we'll call this. Some of them were kind of sort of seen. Some of them not so much. Okay, there's my sharer. So this is from the advertising of the folks who actually make this thing. And I like this close-up view because you can see They actually made it double-sided here. I'm not sure that would make me happy until I actually tested it. Their plastic would work just fine down here. This thing isn't making contact with anything that makes heat on the bottom. It's not making contact. I guess it is. There's probably a screw that runs from the bottom here up through this one, and it's probably a brass bolt. So there may be a drawing a little bit of heat off of that. But again, my biggest concern about this thing is whether or not it'll let Wi-Fi signals out. There's a nice little cutout there for the camera connector, and this is for the CDI connector, and over here, can't see it very well. But I like this. They said, if your thing is normally running at 30, mid-30s, almost 35 degrees, and you put this thing on, it'll take it down to 0C. I don't think so, but I like it. Wishful thinking. So this is the kind of case that Mike uses. This is the Flirk case. It's passive, so it's a all metal case, all aluminum, and then you can see this little thumbprint goes down here, kind of sort of contacts this thermal stuff. And I think that's something worthy of mentioning afterward here. But again, as a metal case, it makes me nervous about Wi-Fi signals. Hey, that looks familiar. So this one's an interesting view of it. They've got a little plastic base down on the bottom that ships with the ice tower. This does not ship with the ice tower. You got to buy these third party, and they make versions of cases for these tall vertical ones, and then there's some low profile ones that the guy did. And I was looking at this red wire. No, you can't see it marvelously clearly, but what you can't see where I'm holding my mouse is a brass pin from the GPIO. That means that it's on the pin that's closest to us, which is the 3.3 volt pin. If we lift this off and move it out to the outer row of pins, that's the 5 volt pin. So heck of a cooler. I went looking for a case for it this week because I'm definitely planning on using this long term. Man, I spent $30 or so for the ice tower, and then you got to spend at least another $20 for a case that works with it, keeps everything out of the way. So that's disappointing. I spent a lot of money on a case and a fan compared to the amount of money that I spent on the Pi. So here's another. This one I like if I see performance specs on it. So it's a great big chunko metal again. Sits on top of the CPU, which is about here, but it doesn't cover up all of the other goodies that I want to do. Now, one of the things you got to be really careful about, I discovered, the mounting brackets on my ice tower come very close to a set of pins that you can't see. They're right behind this RJ45 jack. So I got the thing mounted. You do this with no power, of course, don't want to short anything out. But it was so close, I was really worried about it. So I put a piece of cardboard and taped it in between the mounting bracket and the two pins that it was really close to. But I'd love to see the numbers on this with and without a fan, because that's not a bad solution. And then again, you can buy these little collections of cooling fins and put them on the chips that can get hot. But we saw the performance numbers from the guys testing under overclocking. They're not very impressive. Take a look at this, though. If I'm going to build a PC, let's come face up here. So I'm going to build from scratch, motherboard and a CPU and case and all that good stuff. I get my CPU, I install it in the carrier, and then we take a little squirt of thermal paste. Not enough that when I press the heatsink on it that it drips out over the edge, and not so little that it doesn't go to the edges. It takes a little time and experience to figure out just how much, but I squeeze a little dollop on there. You don't spread it out with your fingers or anything like that. You just set the flat part of the heat sink on the thermal paste, push it down a little bit, starts to spread out, and then you use the locking mechanism for the heat sink fan combination, and that compresses a little more. And now we got a nice smooth contact of thermal paste between the entire top of the chip lid and the bottom of the heat sink. Cool. Last year, there was a viral news story that ran around about a mother who panicked when she found a syringe in her kid's room. Well, the syringe was thermal paste. That's the way it comes. And he was using it because he's a builder, a hacker. And but this just got the industry turned on its ear. And oh my gosh, the syringe is going to make people panic. And so they started working on new technologies to improve thermal paste. And here's one of the problems with thermal paste. The best thermal paste that you can buy out there, whatever brand name makes you happy, Arctic Fox Silver or whatever, is going to dry out. They all do. The nature of the beast. The only question is how long it takes. So it'd be great if they come up with a solution that won't dry out. And they have. They have these really cool new thermal pads. Now, when they first started selling these little cheapo heat sinks for Raspberry Pis, it was a piece of double-sided foam, which has no thermal conductivity whatsoever, conductivity. But then they started building better little tapes, double-sided tapes that got better and better. And the stuff that we're using here last night, that's some pink thermal flexible tape that isn't very sticky on either side. It's just kind of a little bit, keeps it from rubbing. And since we got it clamped straight down, that's pretty cool. But as I was researching this stuff this week, I found that they make these really awesome carbon fiber pads. They're very thin, not surprisingly made of carbon fiber. They're impregnated with a dry silicon material that's highly thermally conductive. And again, you just set it on the CPU, set the heatsink fan on top of that, crank it on. There's nothing to dry out. They have awesome thermal conductivity, and they're not very expensive. They come in several different sizes. They look like little blacky silver pads. Look that up sometime. Thermal conductive pad, CPU, heat sink, something like that. I should have taken some pictures of it, but I didn't. All right, so that was the last of the slides. Well, let's bring that back up because I want to take you back to the beginning of this thing too, to get onto my pointless story. Okay, so these little cheapo, thin aluminum heat sinks that you can buy for pies, they've got a little piece of thermal tape on them. It's better than it used to be. Just peel it off, stick it on the chip, and it helps a little. We saw the performance numbers. It doesn't seem to help a lot, especially in an overclocked. So a few months ago, I went through a spate of dropping things and having to get up and do something and deal with the crisis package delivery guy. And I just sit here with dead airspace, or fortunately in every one of those instances, Scott was here to vamp. But what if it happened now? So I took a page out of Mike's book the other day. Mike's got this little graphic that says, please stand by, or something like that. So I went back into the archives of Internet Dumb and found that. So if I ever had to get up and fix a problem or something like that, that's what you'll see on Uncle's screen, at least for a few moments. All right, going back to thermosiphon for the win. Hey, a few things popped up. Let's go back here. Reading questions. What is this? Your pubbing seems to have impacted your typing. I'd love to be able to go to a pub for lunch every now and again. I love going to England and all parts thereabouts, and catch me in a pub for an evening meal, and I'm especially grateful. But it's maybe I only go to the places where the tourists go because they're a little pricey. But boy, it's a real treat for me to pop in every now and again. Hey, I've got to refresh my YouTube page. Nothing will happen. We will not lose connection, but it's behind. How are we doing here? About 10 more minutes. Cool. All right. I'm caught up. Come on up, chat. and switch it to live chat. Cool. I am caught up. All right. Questions? Did we finish here? I need to redo my Tylenol. It wasn't much that happened while I did all that. Why don't you get an electric car? I have a good time with Scott about that. I have often offered a small trailer that I have and an electric generator that we use here in Houston during the frequent power outages that we experience during late spring and throughout the summer from hurricanes and other bad weather. And I thought, well, if you would just take my generator, put it on a trailer, and drag it behind your electric car, you would never run out of electricity. If you do, you just fire. And he says, but it's got gas in it. That's the whole point of not having an electric car, or of having an electric car. And I well, yeah, but if you're out in the Mojave Desert and there's no charging stations out there, you'll be grateful for my 9-liter gas tank in that thing. Discussionism official 350. It's too bad there's nothing going on but Scott's diary. Nobody is taking any offense. Sorry, man. It's all good. Scott Jernigan says, Zach, for some reason, I can't at Dave anymore. Tell Dave, completely depends. Sorry, checking him where he goes in England. Yeah, of course. Obviously, we usually go to London and then work the outskirts. We take the tube to all of the close connected suburbs, Knightsbridge and Piccadilly and things like that. We tend to stay not in Piccadilly. Yeah, we're usually Paddington. We're up by Paddington when usually when we go and stay there, and we kind of make that our base of operations, and then head outbound. But yeah, and of course all the hotel and motel pubs, those are tourist traps and they're overpriced. So yeah, tell him if he's in London, it's going to be expensive. Absolutely. But I do enjoy going there and getting a rail pass whenever we're in town, and just not even bothering to think about transportation or cabs or anything like that. Jump on the buses, jump on the rail, and that's just so fun. And every day we go back to Paddington and buy a bear. What is this discussion? I'm glad he's gone, but can we shift gears here? We can certainly shift gears. I got 8 more minutes and we can talk about anything you want. Never mind, man. I'm for the dogs. Okay. I don't know that phrase. I'm for the dogs. That sounds like I'm wiped out. I'm knackered. I'm lacquered myself. All right. What else is cooking? Oh, this. I got to bring that up. I can do it. There has been a lot of news in Linux world right now. And I've mentioned this before. If you're not checking this regularly and you have some kind of any kind of interest in Linux in and of itself, not just Raspberry Pi Linux, but all things Linux, make sure you're checking out Linux Today, one word, .com on a regular basis, because they are Linux news aggregators. They just go, people submit, hey, there was a great article I saw today or a great video. They go out and find their own. And there is always a lot of interesting stuff on there. Some of it goes way beyond my comprehension. Some of it goes way below, and a lot of it's right there in the middle. And I read that stuff and I look for ideas. I do. I'm not going to read any of the headlines to you today, but I definitely use some of this stuff for projects, and I'm looking don't want to share that with you. Don't care. That's not that good. Now let's do this. So with just a few minutes left, let me entertain you with just a quick reminder of 2 things. And that is this. We can do this on a timely basis for a change. So you're watching this later. You're watching this in the archives. You want to send a message to us. You didn't get it on the YouTube chat today for whatever reason. Send me an email, daver@totalsem.com, or my personal email, drushtx@yahoo.com. Same for Scott. Send him, good wishes. It's this stuff. The guys in our office, I haven't heard from the women yet, but the guys who have taken the Moderna have all gone through this horrible 24 hours after the second shot. So lots of commiseration and a lot of work missed during those 24 hours. So send him your well wishes for that. And of course, if you want to communicate with the big man himself, this is kind of cool. We were on Discord the other day, and there was a gent who was new to the channel, and somebody had mentioned that, yeah, Mike is usually on here and in person. And he said, are you kidding? Mike comes on here. I could actually talk to him face to face on camera, and he could talk to me and see my face. And said, well, yeah, he's not here today though, but he's got a commitment. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give him a call and see if we can get him on for a couple of minutes. Called him up, and sure enough, he popped in, had a nice discussion. That turned into an email discussion because the guy, Mike, had some resources that were good for the gent. So, and you may wind up in the same thing. Email him with a question. He has been known to say, hey, send me your phone number or I'll send you mine, and we'll talk about whatever issue you've got up there. You can catch us all on Steam, drushtx, Scarheart, or down here, Senor Pepe. There he is. And the other thing, I will be on the Discord channel today when we're done here. After 4 o'clock, it takes me 10 or 15 minutes to get my life cleaned up from here and get things set up. Usually I get interrupted because I have to go make dinner, but we made a gigantic dinner the other day. We're still on leftovers, so I don't have to do a lot of that. So today's link, and this has been a good link for the last week, discord.gg, and it's case sensitive. But again, you could just go to discord.com and search for Total Seminars, and you'll find us. Anything else on here? I'll keep Pi Square open until about 9 or 10 o'clock p.m. my time, Central Daylight Savings Time, excuse me. If you ever want to review the archives of all the Michael stuff or my stuff, Mike's stuff, youtube.com, whack user, whack Total Seminars channel. Or just pirsquare.zapto.org. We went through the honeypots for Alice. That's the tutorial we used last week. This is the tutorial generally that we use this week. And this was the tutorial, same thing, the second one is this one, where we got into that cooling solutions and where you can find how to get the program or find the programs and commands necessary to do your own stress testing and graphing. And these are the 4 commands that we use to either read the polled files for temperatures or speeds, or to do your own direct probing with the VC gen commands, measure clock arm and measure temp. Okay, that's all of them. All right, see what else popped up? Now we're going to close things down. Whoa, baby, what did you just do? Nothing dangerous. It's okay. Hey, Patricia Grace came back. No hacking. It was all good. Patricia Grace, is there an issue using SD cards over 32 gigs for an OS? Not on Raspberry Pi. 128 gigs, 256 gigs work. I've done that. I haven't tried anything bigger than that, and I haven't bothered to read the specs in the last year about what the current max is. But again, 128s and 256s certainly work. I don't have a 512. We'll see what's in the budget, and if I can get a 512, I'll whip one up. It's a UEFI based boot system, so it's good for huge hard drives or huge storage systems. Passing 354 discussion. I'm looking for an industry digital career fair. Man, there's not much going on right now. I'm going to save that question, and I'm going to provide it to Mike so he can talk about it on Monday. And if he doesn't, I will have it for you either on Discord in a couple of days or certainly here on Friday. No, nausea is not one of the symptoms that any of our folks have experienced. I understand others have, but not them. Patricia Grace again, 356 with a Raspberry Pi. I got 30 seconds. You got the OS on SD card. Yes, though you don't have to. You can put the OS on any USB external storage device. You also have your home folder and swap file on the SD card. Your choice. Again, you can do that on externals and boot from the SD, or you can do everything from external, or you can do everything on SD. Does it need to be 32 gigs or less? It does not. And last question, not related to, oh, hi, Nigel. Okay, we're going to close her down. Send me your question on Discord. I'll be there in about 20 minutes, or send it to me by email and I'll give you an answer. It is Friday night. It's 4 o'clock Central Daylight Savings Time. Lyrids start tonight. They're good for the next 2 weeks. They will peak on the 22nd. Hope you're all experiencing better and better times in this pandemic and things are improving. I haven't seen Andre on here. I know they're in tighter lockdown than usual, but let's all do what we can to get through this as quickly as possible and get the world back to normal. Be safe, have fun, and everybody have a good night. I screwed up. I didn't have the red button ready to go. There it is.